You're live.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Rich Roberti, Superintendent of Greater Amsterdam School District. I know we have a number of people on for this presentation to discuss the proposed instructional day increase for the elementary. We do have questions. Nancy Rad is going to be monitoring those. And if people do submit things, we'll hopefully answer most of those in the presentation, and really should kind of get all the questions answered pretty early, and then we'll accept other items you may have specifically. So always start off with our kids, as I had in some other presentations, following all the rules spaced out. And what we're trying to do is provide more opportunities for our students. So they will be wearing masks still, but hopefully we'll have more students in. So today I spent some time at a couple of our elementary buildings working with our architects. And so we're trying to determine the maximum capacity we have in each classroom. So they had gone through previously, looked at the square footage based on CDC guidelines. The CDC allows us to have students within 3 feet. What they prefer is 6 feet apart, which is what we've been doing. Same thing on our buses. But what we're looking for is to just ensure that we still provide a safe environment for everybody, but also maximizing the space that we have. So we've been looking at the classrooms that we currently have students in for purple and gold, making determinations on the size of those classrooms and if there's available space to accommodate more students. As I said, we're still following those CDC guidelines, which have changed a little bit, working with county health officials. And for our secondary, we're also looking at additional options for our high school seniors to try to have some level of normalcy as they complete their senior year. Special education and those struggling academically, we really want to get into buildings more often. So this is the first phase in a program to try to get back to normalcy for our students, to get them in class more. We know that's the best thing for them. You hear from the Academy of Pediatrics and says how important it is to have our students in person, that is more important for their mental health than it would be for the concern of possibly contacting COVID. So, and Parent Square is being used to determine which classrooms will need barriers depending on that feedback that we get from parents. So, so what we're doing, elementary students currently enrolled in person will attend 4 days a week. We're combining those groups. Wednesdays remain remote only for just about all students. COVID cases are on the decline. The vaccinations have started, people are getting those, and we felt like this is the right time to start looking at how we can do this. And so we were doing this independently, but in addition, we started hearing that other schools in Montgomery County and in our area had similar plans to bring students back more often. We're on the same page that we feel it's important to do. So obviously we're still in a pandemic. We still have concerns. There's some spikes here and there, but we're trying to honor as many possible requests as we have while still saying that, you know, as it has been, health and safety is our main priority. So, and if we hit a point where we have to shift, which we did just a couple weeks ago, shift to remote for any reason, I hope we don't have to again, but there's local school districts that have had to do that right now. So there's no guarantee, but if we follow our protocols within the school, we haven't had those issues. So that's the overall plan for elementary now. We're looking at options for secondary, and then students who are currently remote only, we're going to honor as many requests as we can possibly take. And I really think, based on working with our architects today, that we can honor those requests. If we get 98% of our students who want to come back, well, we're still in a pandemic, so that's a concern. But I really feel as though the plan we have in place and the square footage and the idea of the barriers that we have, which I'm going to show you in a second, we can put these barriers between our students and have them closer than 6 feet too. So thank you, Ms. Smith. All right. Did I see it? Let's see. Highlights. Okay. All right. Special education, Christine?
Sure. So K-12 grade levels who receive the consultant teacher services, those students who are currently coming in twice a week will return 4 days a week. So they'll be coming that Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Students in special class at the elementary level, that K-5, who are currently attending 4 days, that Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, will attend a partial day on Wednesday. We're looking at the secondary grades, that middle school and high school for special class, to be able to increase opportunities for those students as well. With that shift, we'll have to no longer offer that in-person related services on Wednesday but that would begin certainly that week that we return.
Great.
Excuse me, return in March.
For March, right, in March, which is that March 16th after that Superintendent's Day on March 15th. So, good. Nancy, any questions yet? We good? Okay. This is kind of indexation. How do we get to? Okay. So why the change at this time? As educators, we know that, as I said before, this is the best place for our students. We know that we can quantify that students are less likely to spread or catch COVID within the school setting. Health experts say that going back in with the safeguards in place protects students. Our COVID dashboard that we've looked at hasn't really had a lot of positive cases. It's been going down. We had a holiday spike, and this number sticks in everybody's head. January 14th, we had 22% positivity rate. And that was scary, and it was predicted by Dr. Fauci. It was predicted by, all the health experts, and we saw that spike. But across the region and in the area and across the country, we're seeing a majority of spots where cases are going down. And I'll show you some of those statistics here. As you can see, we went to 3.92% on Thursday of last week, and then on Saturday it was 3.5. The Montgomery County metrics included that rolling average, which was 3.63. So these are averages that we had that were 18, 14, a high of 22. We really feel like this is the time, and we're talking 5 weeks from now, where students start getting outside again. We have air purifiers, we have spacing, we can open windows hopefully. So I really feel like this is a great time to get it in. And then we have people that are getting vaccinated. We had a number of teachers get vaccinated, a lot of staff are getting vaccinated. So all those things combined, we felt like this is the right time. And in my mind, it's the right thing to do to get our kids in school as much as they can be. Another great encouraging sign, right now our JV boys have a basketball game just right up in the high school. I just went up to see them. Our girls have started practice. They have a game on Friday night. So winter sports were approved, high-risk sports. So I think that's another sign that, yes, we're headed around the right bend on this. We're in a good spot. So we're excited about that. I went up and visited our athletes. They couldn't be more appreciative as they are loving the idea of getting back to some level of normalcy. As I've talked about before, my own kids are so excited about this opportunity too. So I think that's another one of those factors, one of those things that we see that lets us know that this is the time that we can, look to have more students in.
We do have a question.
Okay.
With grades 3 to 5 live streaming, wouldn't it make more sense to keep purple, gold, but allow 12 kids in each group so more students can actually be in the classroom at least 2 days a week?
Well, I guess if the concern would be if we couldn't accommodate the number of kids that want to come in. And so you're saying keep purple and gold and keep a group of 12 for purple and a group of 12 for gold. And that way 24 kids can be in person. That's going to depend on the parent feedback. So that's a great question. It's that's what we're kind of doing right now. What we want to do is the 4 days a week. We want the kids in twice as much. So if we realize that the vast majority of our parents want their kids in, and now it's a health and safety issue, we feel like having crowded hallways and 25 kids in a class every day, if we're concerned with it, we could look at that option. But I really feel as though we'll be able to accommodate all the requests that we have unless it's overwhelming. So I don't think we'll have to do that, but that's something we could look at if we get an overwhelming response. So,
Right.
Okay. And keep questions coming. So important dates. We emailed staff last week to tell them about that and got some feedback from our teaching staff. Obviously, all of you know that Parents Square, we put a notice out about that. We're having our forum now. Starting this Friday, we will allow parents to submit their request to have their students go from remote only to in-person. So if students are currently in a purple and gold group, they're automatically in. But we don't know if parents that have students remote only now want their kids in person. Last time we did a change, we had 300 families decide to go back out of school to remote only. So we didn't want to make the assumption that everybody wanted to. So this is your way to submit the requests, to put them in a timestamp. And, I really feel, like I said before, that we should be able to accommodate most of those requests. And, that should really work out. So getting all those names on February 24th, we'll submit those to transportation because now we'll have combined runs, which would no longer be purple and gold, which was based on a neighborhood. Parents will get the updated bus route cards on March 5th. And then we start this combination of purple and gold on March 16th. So that's our plan overall on the dates. and the highlights of what we're looking at. So I can pause and answer any questions, or if anybody has any feedback within our team that's here.
There's someone has said they have a question, but it wasn't read, but I'm not seeing it, so I've asked for them to redo it. We do have one. If you're going to accommodate requests, why the timestamp?
The timestamp is so we feel as though we can comfortably honor all the requests that are made. If we have a point where, as I said, if we get 98% of our parents that want their kids in, that we would use that timestamp to look at how quickly people put their requests in. And if we get to a point where we can't let everybody in, it would be a time-sensitive one. So that was the idea.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We have another one.
We hope we don't have to use it, but we're doing that as a backup. But I really feel confident we can make it work.
How do we know if our child will have space in their school? What exactly happens if there's no space in their classroom to return in person?
So right now we have a list that we put together, and this breaks down every classroom in the district in K through 5. And so we know each classroom that either has less than 12 kids right now. We know every classroom that would have above 12 students if they were combined. So we know where there's space even without going above 12. So all we're asking parents to do is, if they're remote only, to put their request in, and then we will determine if there's space. We've also said if we have to make adjustments and where that class might meet, we can move out of a smaller classroom so they can accommodate more students safely. It could be an alternative area like the media center or a PLC room or whatever it might be. So we have teams from district office. Each person within district office is assigned to a building to work with that building principal respectively, and they'll work together to find the spaces, which we just did today at Techler, and we went through and we highlighted which rooms need what, which rooms need barriers based on the students we currently have that would be purple and gold, and then we'll look at that again once we get the requests in, and then we know how many parents actually want to sit back. So
the district gave parents a safe plan. We are nearing the end of this nightmare. It's going to break my kid's heart when I have to pull them. Why the big change now?
Well, I think I said that in the beginning. I think I feel strongly that the right spot is for students to be in school, and multiple districts are bringing their students back more days. Some schools have students in 5 days a week in smaller districts. I think it's the right thing to do to have students in 4 days a week. It's the best thing for them mentally, socially. My own kids, I've talked about it, they really dislike online learning in their teenagers. And so I think it's really important to get them in, and I think we can still follow our safety protocol.
I have a parent who said I am assuming they submitted questions earlier, and they want to know why their questions are not being addressed.
I'm not seeing them, so if you can just ask it again, we can address it.
Well, there's a whole list. It was in an email that was sent to you. I don't have that.
Well, specific emails that were sent to me, I generally was trying to answer those questions here, and I emailed a couple parents back, but I didn't get to all of them today. So if they're specific, we tried to answer everything here, but I had 2 people that I don't know if I wrote back to, but I believe we covered everything they had questions on. So,
is the timestamp request a commitment to return? No.
No. If you decide not to, then that's okay. You can stay in remote only. We would just need to know it by the end of that period of time on this, like by the 20th, just so we're not sending out, redoing the bus routes and having, note cards sent out for the new routes that would be done.
I waived transportation at the beginning of the year to help alleviate the pressure.
You can still have
bringing my kids for a living.
You can go back. You can go back to transportation anytime you would like. That is not you're not removed from being able to do that. So you'd certainly, if your students are going to go back in person, that's why we're doing all the updated cards and routes. Your students would be able to go back on the bus. Good question.
If you feel the best scenario is for kids to be in school, why set up a scenario that might block some kids from returning?
I don't believe it will. I really feel that we can make this work. We've worked together as a team to try to find solutions to this. I know that if we get too many requests and we determine that it's not a safe environment, then we have to adjust what we're doing. But I feel that getting kids in more often is the way that we're trying to do it. And we have, we'll have to have a caveat that if it's too much, then we'll look at it. So I think it's going along the lines of what we're trying to do.
So our parent who was saying about the question, she's going to try to type them in here separately. So
okay, all right.
She's wondering if they were too long that she typed in. I'm not sure. And that's all so far question-wise.
Okay.
I think. Go back through. I think that maybe some people are confused that when they sent their questions to Lori for the board meeting, that they were thinking they were for here.
Oh, okay.
Some people sent an email to Lori to read at the board.
Oh, okay.
Is what I'm getting.
I think Lori only thought she had one email that was for the board, so I'm not sure.
She said she typed in their name.
Okay.
I can look on the computer and just see.
If they reshare them.
It says no, he didn't
answer
cover
after
me,
the
choose not
form.
limit comments because they're too long, he didn't. He did not answer no email.
Okay, oh, here, it just popped up on mine. Well, YouTube is not allowing her to make the comments because they're too long. Hold on,
Does she want to email them to me?
Or text them to somebody.
I was gonna say she could share them. Actually, Karen, if you want to send them to me through Facebook Messenger, I can read them that way. I do have a question. My children are already hybrid, not remote, but, so who do I contact to get them added back to the transportation route? That would be transportation.
Transportation department, yeah.
Annex, transportation.
So you would need to call the transportation department for the school district for that. What percentage of kids in the elementary are currently online only? How will a return to more in-person students affect schedules and learning for those staying online?
Depends on the building, but generally we're 32 to 40% remote only right now in the elementary. So that's the overall number. How it'll affect instruction. The great thing is that our instruction is improved every week, every month. Currently, all grades 3 through 5 are providing synchronous instruction, so it's live to their students all day. Those that are home and those that are in class are getting the same instruction. Secondary has already been doing that. High school was doing that probably 4 months ago, that 90% of their core classes were getting done that way. So secondary, a vast majority, if not all core classes are being live streamed. So the students who are home are getting the same. So this should have no effect on it. It would just mean that there are less kids at home getting the instruction, more kids in the class, but that wouldn't affect the instruction whatsoever, as far as I would see it as. So.
Okay, so here we have a couple of the questions that didn't go through before. If the goal was to get all students back in the classroom, this new model that you are proposing contradicts this goal by excluding and punishing the students who are currently ROL. If each classroom is able to accommodate 12 children, why aren't you considering keeping the hybrid in-person learning model to allow for all students to return in-person learning?
Because we're not maxed out right now. There's only,
Yeah, we're not maxed out,
there's
so.
only 3 or 4 kids in the classroom right now.
So when we have,
Why?
so when we look at our groups and you look at certain elementary schools, you can have a group on a gold group for one class that has 3 kids in the gold group. That's Monday and Tuesday, but there are 8 kids on the purple day. So that's 11. So we can allow 12 or even 13 in some classes we saw today. So we're not excluding anyone. We're combining because we can, because the kids will have more time in person. And as I stated several times in the beginning of the presentation and now, we believe that we can accommodate all the requests if we get 100 or 200 or 300 requests throughout the 4 buildings, and using barriers and using spacing and moving to other areas in the building, like any type of special room, an art class, the cafeteria being split, a gym, media center, whatever it might be. We have options, and also some pre-K rooms aren't being used that we were in today that are huge, that can accommodate up to 18 or 20 students without barriers even. So we're maximizing the space and maximizing the number of students in person. I don't foresee this excluding anyone. I really don't.
Okay, so then, I'm getting it now in my messenger.
Yeah.
Is this the last opportunity that remote-only students will be able to switch to in-person learning? If so, do you think it would have benefited the student body to first find out if remote-only learning students were interested in returning to school before making a dramatic switch?
That's what that Parent Square app is there for, to see what that level of interest is. So my goal is more time for students to be in school. So I'm very clear, and I said it from the beginning that we hope to be able to do that. Our goal is to get all the kids in. That's the idea of the remote only, to have them in. So I don't see, you say that question again? I think that what we're doing is allowing that.
Right, so like, I think you pretty much answered that for her. Because it's not really the last opportunity.
It's not the last opportunity, right? We've done 10 weeks at a time to let people in. 10 weeks ago, we let people decide, whereas I stated 300 went back out. So our thought and what we can quantify is that we've had more people want to go out of the building than come back in. So this is your opportunity, if you have a remote only student, to submit and put your request in to have them back in person.
So is it responsible, let alone legal, to offer in-person education to only half of the elementary student body? Up until this point, the hybrid model accommodated every student's preferred learning method while considering health and safety during the pandemic. Now, under the proposed model, a portion of the student body is not being provided an equal opportunity to return to in-person learning. How is that viewed as an equitable education model if students who want to attend are not given that opportunity?
I think you're making an assumption that we can't accommodate the students. So we can, and if we can't, we'll adjust. So it's making it a more equal opportunity to have students in more. And we have live instruction for those students that didn't exist 3 months ago or 4 months ago in 3 through 5. So we've improved the model. This is not excluding anyone in my eyes. It's allowing more students to come back and have students in more often. We've heard concerns of childcare since the beginning, of 2 days a week wasn't sufficient, that people had trouble finding places for their students to go. This is an opportunity, as far as I'm concerned, to allow students back in. So I don't see it excluding anyone. And if it does, then we'll adjust it. And that's going to depend on what people put in for requests. I think we have less than 100 people in this meeting tonight. That could be an indication that maybe there's 100 parents who want their kids to come back, which would be very simple to accommodate 25 or 30 students per building. You wouldn't even really see a big change in the number of students per building. So,
another question, just like you underestimated the demand for the remote only learners in the summer, I think you're significantly underestimating how many people plan to send their kids back for the last trimester. But I think you've addressed that in your...
Well, I think, nobody's been through a pandemic and had to have students in class. So nobody could have predicted the number of students that request remote only. Over the summer, when we first started, nobody even talked about remote only as an option, nor did anybody request to have that. So I don't know how anybody could have predicted who would be requesting it and who wouldn't. So we're addressing this, and we'll see what requests are, and we'll adjust where we need to. So
can I opt out after I sign them up?
Sure. You always have the option to take your student back out. If you opt out, we probably wouldn't let them back in, because we can't just keep having it change with transportation and the number of students and desks and all that. But certainly you could opt out if you determined that it wasn't. We would always let people go back out. Coming back in affects transportation and numbers in the classroom.
Okay, I'm not sure if this is really a question, but I am going to read it. The county is no longer contact tracing. While the principals are trying to do their best, they're not professional contact tracers. They've been overwhelmed with the tracing as it is. In the last case I was part of as a teacher, a positive student resulted in only one voluntary adult quarantine. None of the students near the student during the day were quarantined. I'm not sure if that's really a question, but...
Well, I mean, what we found is when students are wearing masks, we haven't had transmission of the COVID within the district. So the contact tracing was not working from the county's eye because people weren't following the protocols outside of their workplace or school. So we're doing all of our protocols to keep people safe, and it's worked. So we'll continue to.
Is there any chance our child would end up having to change teachers or even schools if their teacher's room is full?
A student would not have to change if they're currently in person, purple and gold. They will be guaranteed to stay in there. The only way a student might change is if they're currently remote only They put in a request to have their student now attend in person, and that particular teacher has 25 children, and everybody in that class requested it, and her class can only accommodate 21 people or 19 students, whatever it might be. That way we would look, okay, maybe there's another third grade that they could go to, or maybe there's another building. I don't know if that'll happen. We won't know until we have the request from parents. But if they're currently in person, they would not have to be removed. And if they wanted to stay remote, they would keep the same teacher. It would just be if too many requests came for that one particular teacher at one particular grade. Right?
Your announcement said we wouldn't get to submit a survey if our classroom was already maxed out. Is that no longer the case?
That is not the case. That was, I think the wording on that is we were just trying to make sure that we made it very clear that our plan is to accommodate all requests that we can possibly in a safe environment, but we didn't want to guarantee a spot if, again, we had an overwhelming response for one particular grade or teacher or building.
I apologize if someone feels that we're mocking your questions. We're not mocking your questions. We initially thought we had 1 or 2 openings, but we're now learning we can probably accommodate more.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's a concern here.
Yep.
This method will not accommodate everyone. Well, we don't know that for sure.
We don't know who's going to request. We'll know next week. So.
It's a fluid plan in that,
right.
As we go through this the next few weeks.
That's why we're not starting it next week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. We're doing this well over a month from now, and we can adjust if need be based on the demand. In worst case scenario, we can't do it. We can stay with purple and gold and nothing has to change. So remember, the whole intent was to allow our students to come back in person for more days. And there were a number of requests for that. People had requested that remote only improve and the instructional model improve. People had requested their students be in person more often. We're working on that. The remote model now has live instruction at almost every grade level, 90% of the time. We've improved that model. Remember, there are districts that haven't let students back in person the entire year. We are trying to go above and beyond and have our students in more. So I take no offense to the questions, but I want you to understand where it's coming from is to provide a better education and provide the social emotional learning that students need. So if we have to adjust, we will adjust, but we're not going to know until parents fill out those forms.
Did you consider that some in-person students may not want to attend 4 days per week? There could be parents who let their children return to in-person learning under the assumption that class size was going to be kept to a minimum. Are you going to give those parents the option to opt out of an in-person learning to allow for more remote-only students to opt in?
Sure, certainly. If a parent wants their student to be remote, that is absolutely fine. We will always allow that. That's not a space issue. It's the physical space in the classrooms and the safety that make it an issue for numbers. You can always have that option to go back out.
All right, so you clearly stated that the ROL students would not be allowed in if there was, would only be allowed in if there was room. Your tune seems to have changed since the parents squared a memo. You also said that we may get a form to fill out Thursday. Is that true? Yes, it's adjusted, right? So
everybody will get a form.
Yes, the 11th, the 12th.
Everybody will get a form on the 12th. Everyone can get into that form. Today, we had a great meeting with our architects. We physically went into classrooms, determined with the barriers and the square footage that we could certainly accommodate more students. And we're going to be sending all of the request numbers to the architects once we know the total number to make sure the square footage fits and our plan for barriers to make sure it's safe and it provides the best environment for our students. So all those things couldn't happen until they physically looked at the building, which happened today. So I don't know if my tune has changed, but we always had the intention of bringing as many students back as we could.
Why weren't we surveyed before the district made a well thought out plan?
The survey is the parent square piece you'll fill in, and we feel confident we do have a well thought out plan. We've been planning this for quite some time, and now we have the next 5 weeks to take the numbers and actually implement it.
Apologies if this was already covered, but what is the max number of students each class can accommodate for 4 days in person? I've heard 12 and I've heard 25.
It's going to be somewhere in the middle, probably. Initially, it always was 12 based on CDC guidelines of 6 feet apart. That's preferred. 3 feet apart is something we can do. Again, we don't want to, in the middle of a pandemic, have too many kids in a classroom, in the hallways, in the cafeteria, just overall. So we can accommodate more than 12. It depends on the square footage. There are some classrooms that are older. Techler has a lot of newer classrooms that are larger, so it's going to depend on the size of the class. It's going to depend on the number of students that are requested, and whatever furniture in there. Is it permanent that we couldn't move out? So it's all going to be kind of fluid depending on the number of requests we get. And it's going to depend on the square footage of the classroom. Today we had classrooms that were over 900 square feet. We had classes just over 700. So those classes can accommodate different numbers of students. And that's why we have teams that'll go into the buildings to determine if that class needs to go to an alternative location within the building.
Do you consider that some in-person students have subpar attendance? Will you consider removing those students from in-person learning and putting them back on ROL to allow for another person?
We had this question come up in regards to if a student has subpar attendance, to remove them, to require them to go out. I have concerns with that. Pedagogically, if you have a student who's not active and now you say, even if you're coming once a week or once every 5 days, and now we're going to permanently remove you, I think it's going to make them even more disconnected from the school. So I have concerns with that. I don't think that's the best thing, but that was brought up to us. Again, this is all going to matter on the number of parents that fill out the request and want their children to come back.
Please clarify what the plan is for siblings looking to return to school. Upon reading this new plan, it seems that one sibling could potentially be allowed into the classroom if there is room and another may not. Do you think this is a suitable option for families?
Certainly, it would be difficult. I have 2 children, so if one was 4 days a week and one was 2 or something, it would make it difficult. I hope that's not the case. I don't foresee it, but sorry to repeat, it's going to depend on how many people want to come in.
Do we still have to hurry and submit the form because it's on a first come, first served basis?
I would do it sooner than later because we don't know what the requests are going to be, but I would get it done on the 12th. We'll take them until the 17th. So that's all I can say.
If and when the form comes out, will we be allowed to enter one form per family, or will we have to fill out forms for each child wanting to go back to school? If so, are you going to take the first child's timestamp and use that for the children in the household? It wouldn't be fair for me to pick which one of my children deserves to go back and submit that form.
Depends on how we set up Parent Square. I honestly don't know what Parent Square will look like.
I think we're going to, because we're going to
do it district-wide, right?
I'm going to set up a completely different
district-wide, so they'll be able to add multiple students, right?
Yes.
I think, yeah. So you'll be able to put multiple students in the same request. Just make sure you specify grade level, teacher, and building.
I missed a couple questions here. If a class maxes out, why should the current remote-only learning students have to make a change? We don't know the numbers, so.
We don't know.
Because we don't know how many people are going to respond yet. So we're not necessarily saying that the remote-only learners are going to be the ones who have to compromise. As people pointed out, we'll have some already in person that are going to stop coming and want to be remote only. We just don't know how many people want to return yet, and we have to work with that number once we get.
And we do know that
with that live instruction piece, it's just
it's synchronous, so that that instruction doesn't matter that drastically if students are getting that live instruction every day anyway. So I don't think it's that drastically different. It's just that in-person model for those socially that need that, and the mental health component of it, I think, is important to provide that option. So
my son's teacher could be responsible for all her current students in person in ROL, and now also be responsible for more if they're switched to her classroom because it's a bigger space.
Not necessarily. We don't know that. It's going to depend again.
With the CT kids returning, that's DCT kids, but it's CT, this is a high school question. Kids returning to 4 days a week, will those barriers be in the high school classes? Who's going to be cleaning those barriers between classes?
Certainly, if the barriers are needed in that classroom to accommodate those students, yes, and we'll make appropriate arrangements to ensure that they're cleaned.
Right.
How is the district making up for the loss of teacher-led learning?
I don't know what that really means, teacher-led learning.
I'm not sure.
Well, I think, you have students coming in school more. We have a number of online components like iReady We have teachers majority teaching live instruction that's providing synchronous learning to students in grades 3 through 12. Teachers have office hours where students are struggling. AIS students are being serviced by those teachers as well. I think there's a number of resources that are available. So I think we've started that process, and I think we've moved ahead with that. So I think that's been addressed.
Wouldn't a child being in school 2 days a week in a small class be more socially and emotionally healthy than him going into a bigger class and being kept behind a plastic barrier 4 days a week?
We don't know if they'll have to be in a barrier, and it's only those students that have to be closer than 6 feet that would have to be in a barrier. So we have classes that can accommodate 15 students without having any barriers. So again, it's going to depend on the requests that we receive.
How do you, let's see, okay, this is like a whole bunch in separate ones. How do you justify only 45 minutes a day of teacher-led learning, and how do you explain school 2 days a week for 4.5 hours?
It's 4 days a week, and then there's a remote-only day on Wednesday, so I would say you're talking in-person instruction. The idea of this is to increase the amount of in-person instruction, and then K1-2, we're talking about, I don't know what grade level you're specifically stating, but K1-2, we're talking about having more core instructional time with live instruction at those levels as well. But what's developmentally appropriate for a student to be on a screen all day is hard to say. There's more than 4.5 hours, 2 days a week. And we know that statistically. We've seen how much students are online, and we see that our teachers are streaming live instruction in a synchronous model. So I don't think that's necessarily accurate.
Okay, so will students be denied returning to in-person instruction if my child's classroom is currently at 12? We won't know those answers until we get the numbers of kids from the survey form.
Mm-hmm.
Wants to know, this person asked 2 different questions here in a row. How come the elementary grades only have 4 kids in a class in person, which is why we're switching to the 4-day,
Right.
merging the gold and the purple kids together so that there's not just 4 kids. Some buildings have that, not all classrooms have that.
Yeah, so when I mentioned that was that's one on our list that's the purple and gold. So we're talking about a purple group might have 4 Monday, Tuesday, and then the other group might have 7. So they would have 11 when combined. So that's why we've talked about, well, if that's that few of kids, you look in classrooms and buses, they're empty. That's why we discussed this, to get kids in more, because we can. I really don't see it as a negative that we're hearing. I hope most will see it as a positive, that we want our students in more often. So.
Did we answer the Sibley question?
Yeah, we did.
Upon reading the
We don't know.
plan, it seems that one Sibley could potentially be both. I think we addressed that, didn't we? Okay. Teacher-led learning. So you would rather scatter students all over the school than just keep the 2-day model and allow for all students to attend?
I would rather not scatter students. We said if we ran into options where there was one particular class that was overwhelmed, then we could provide that as an opportunity for a student to be able to attend.
Now, our pre-Ks.
The bottom line is we're in a pandemic still. So we're following guidelines that never existed before. This all could be completely different. Everybody's back in September in a normal fashion. Maybe it's not. So what we're trying to do is present a model that's a closer level of normalcy for students more often in person. And if we get overwhelmed with the number of responses, then we can go back to the regular model. But I think it was my personal feeling is that this is something we should look into for what would be best for our students. So if we determine that we can't do it, then we won't. If it's not safe, then we won't. But it's all going to depend on the request. So.
I'll read this one. So luck of the draw will put kids behind a barrier. Have you ever sat behind a plastic barrier all day, and how do you think that will make our students feel?
We'll find out. It's not perfect. We are in the middle of a pandemic globally. Other districts have been using the barriers all year. Local districts have used the barriers all year. We could ask other students how they feel about it. We can get some feedback, but right now it's our best option.
And sometimes the barrier will be in between.
Right,
too.
we'll be in between them, right. So they won't have to necessarily look through it. It could be just between the 2 students. So it could be perpendicular to them as opposed to directly in front of them. So
There's a dad that I think it's a dad. I am not sure. It's hard to tell from the name. I'm gonna suggest that maybe tomorrow that you reach out to, because there's a lot of questions on here.
Okay.
But I think it warrants more of a conversation with you, if you don't mind. So
the questions haven't been answered?
Not all of them. Some of them I have and shared, and some of them are not. They're just more statements that I think that should be a conversation with the superintendent rather than.
Okay, very good.
Let's see. I think that's all right now I have here.
Okay, good.
I hope I've answered the ones that were sent to me in Messenger. I got a couple more. Hold on. Can you read a question, comment? Can you read a question at the board meeting? Only if it was submitted prior, right? So if you have a question now for the board, it won't be read because it needed to be submitted by a certain time frame.
Right? Yeah.
Let's see. It's an amazing job you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's always nice to hear. And the other one is also along those same pleasant
Okay,
comments.
very good. All right, so I think we've answered them all. We've had some repetitions from that. So specific questions, you can always email me and send it in. And we have 5 weeks until this is implemented. So please, February 12th, start submitting those names and then we can work out the plan. Again, if we're overwhelmed with the responses, we've tried to get kids in more. If it's not a safe environment, we won't do it. I don't think that's going to be the case, but we have a plan in place as a backup to that as well. So I feel confident we can make it work. And if we can't, I have no problem with saying it doesn't work because we're not going to put anybody in harm's way, including our staff. So
we do have one more, and this is about special areas, it's a pretty good question. So how will you accommodate the specials? Would the teacher come to the classroom or would the students go to a smaller classroom? But currently, in elementary schools,
right.
they're on a cart. Like art is on a cart, and they come into the classroom, and I believe that will continue.
Yeah, that'll continue. Yep. Okay.
I hope I can.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And any other questions, please just email me. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.